What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the New York Giants are getting ready for this upcoming Christmas Day matchup. Merry Christmas to everybody listening in. Thank you all for spending 2023 with us and being faithful viewers of the channel Fireside Giants. We appreciate you, and we hope you all have a happy holiday. But talking about this upcoming matchup and talking about some of the players playing in this matchup, the New York Giants offense will, of course, be one of the storylines entering this game because they're going up against a Philadelphia Eagles defense that has definitely struggled, is a little bit banged up. But would that even spell kind of trouble for them, considering the terrible Giants offense that they're going up against? I'm not so sure. But when you take a look at this Giants offense, it's been a rough season. Quarterback problems, offensive line problems, and problems in the receiving game as well. Not a lot of playmakers out there, a lot of injuries. It's just been a rough year for the New York Giants offense. But looking ahead to the future and looking at some of the talent on this roster, I don't think it is all that bad. I think that there are some young pieces that the Giants can develop, build around, and hopefully have a good offense in the near future. Now, of course, we've been talking about the draft and the free agency coming up, and we've mentioned maybe targeting a WR1 is the move. Maybe we should be going after a top wide receiver in the middle rounds of the draft or in free agency spending big money. But honestly, you take a look at this roster, and there are a couple of young receivers that the Giants have on this team that are worth building around and could be some pretty potentially great players in the near future. So we're going to go ahead and talk about Wan'Dale Robinson and Jaylen Hyatt in today's episode, discuss how we think they've performed this season, where they can improve, and how they might develop into really good players for the Giants in the future. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topics down below in the comment section. If you listen on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. How are you doing today, my friend, and how are you feeling about Wan'Dale Robinson and Jaylen Hyatt?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Hopefully everyone listening is also doing fantastic, spending some good time with family, staying safe out there. As a lot of you guys are probably traveling, as I am as well. But yeah, good opportunity to talk about two players that we're excited about for the future, and not all the Debbie Downer stuff and this and that and the quarterback situation. We've discussed it. We'll go through more in detail during the offseason as we keep mentioning. But these two players, and we've talked about the idea of like going out and getting a WR1, whether that's like a Neighbors or drafting a guy, maybe trying to get someone in the second round with some really great developmental upside, or going into the free agent market and trying to acquire a player. If not, wait until 2025 when the market will be flush with really good talent, given they do hit the open market. So right now, if you're a Giants fan, you ask yourselves, what do we have available? What does our future look like with the players we do have on this roster? And my friends, Jaylen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson are very good players. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're WR1s because I don't think that's realistic, but they can both be very good WR2s. I mean, for what it's worth, you look at, for example, the Houston Texans, they don't have a WR1. Nico Collins is a really good WR2. Tank Dell's a good WR2. Like, they don't have that true and tried, like, Devontae Adams. They don't have that Jamar Chase. You know what I mean? They don't have that high, like, elite caliber player, but they still have one of the best offenses in the game. And you have to ask yourself why. Well, really good quarterback situation. Offensive line has been really injured, so similar situation to the Giants. And obviously they've maximized guys like Dalton Schultz and really just operated at a high level. And for what it's worth, C.J. Stroud's ability to throw the ball downfield has been a really big factor in that offense. And the Giants, you have guys like Jaylen Hyatt, who their specialty is getting downfield. Well, they haven't really been able to maximize him in that regard. So, we'll start with Jaylen Hyatt because this is a guy that's like obviously in the middle of developing. He has 3 drops this year, over 34 targets. Definitely has to work on his hands. But 22 years old. This kid, he's a kid. You know what I mean? Like this is a guy who I am very excited about. Really great speed. He's getting better as a route runner. They're trying to get him more involved. And the weird thing to me, Anthony, is how there's some games where they prioritize Jaylen Hyatt and then other games where they completely disregard him. And it seems the similar way for Wan'Dale Robinson too. This has been a pretty consistent situation where Wan'Dale has a great game and then he disappears. Or Jaylen Hyatt has a great game and they completely ignore him. And that's probably a result of a couple things. One of them being the offensive line doesn't give Tommy DeVito enough time. The second thing is opposing defenses are just taking advantage of an undrafted rookie quarterback. And look, it's going to happen. He's going to struggle against the Saints. That pass rush was really solid for them. Obviously, our offensive line failed, and Tommy was having trouble getting rid of the ball quickly. And obviously, that's not going to aid a long passing game. So, not really blaming Tommy DeVito as much as I am the offensive line in this scenario. But in the future, Jaylen Hyatt's MO is his deep passing capabilities, getting open downfield, expanding the defense, pulling safeties out of position. We actually envisioned a really dynamic duo with Hyatt and Darius Slayton on the outside. We thought, push those guys downfield, draw safeties out of position, open up the middle of the field for security blankets like Darren Waller, who can expose the seams. That's what we had envisioned at the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, the Giants haven't really been able to do that, mainly because, Darren Waller's been injured. Offensive line's been bad, so they can't wait for the receivers to get downfield. And the turnover at the quarterback position has been pretty significant. So the hope is next year they can finally reinforce this offensive line. And I know a lot of people are saying, like, we need to go draft an offensive tackle in the first round. I talked about this extensively yesterday. You can't expect a guy to get drafted and immediately help this offensive line. It needs time to develop. Also, Joe Alt, Fashanu, both left tackles, transitioning to the right side. There's going to be a hurdle to go through there. So it's not just a guaranteed, proven commodity, like true and tried, plug-and-play player. It's not going to happen. There's going to be a sample size of time you need for those guys to get better if they ever do get there. Nothing's ever guaranteed out of the draft. So with that being said, I'd love to put some money toward it. The Giants have about $50 million available. And in 2024, if they take that out in Jones' contract, have even more money to throw at the offensive line if you need to. So, what are your thoughts on Jaylen Hyatt? What you've seen from him this year, I think, has to work a little bit more on his hands. I've seen him drop a couple of really easy catches. Those are things I think he can improve upon. Those are fixable things. But at the same time, his skill set just isn't really great for this offense right now because of the weaknesses that we have on the offensive line. But I do think that there's more to his game in terms of route running. They've limited him pretty significantly at times in terms of his route running. The crossing concepts, I'd love to see more of those. I don't know why they don't do more of it. But, curious to get your take on it and what you think his development looks like in the near future.
Listen, I think the sky is really high for Jaylen Hyatt. I mean, he's got limitless potential because he's got such elite speed, he's got good ball skills, and I think that there's more room to grow for him, of course. And if I had to pinpoint one thing that he needs to improve on the most, it's consistency. He's a very inconsistent player. He'll show up in some games and he'll be a big mismatch for opposing defenses. He'll hit on some big plays, make some 40-yard reception. But no touchdowns, nothing game-breaking yet from Jaylen Hyatt, and he does that kind of great stuff in one game, and then he kind of disappears in the next. A lot of that has to do with game planning. The Giants' game plan has been confusing for Jaylen Hyatt. They haven't incorporated him fully into the game plan, haven't made him a focal point, but maybe that is because they find him a little bit undependable. Maybe they don't think they can depend on him, and a lot of that has to do with what you mentioned, Alex. He's had a few drops this season that are just concentration drops. And what I think with Jaylen Hyatt, I'm going to make a kind of basketball analogy here. He's like a volume shooter. He's like a Russell Westbrook. If he's not getting the ball in his hands frequently, if he's not putting up shots, he goes cold, right? And I think that's what's happening with Jaylen Hyatt is he disappears from the game for long stretches at a time because he's not on the field, he's not getting snaps, he's not getting warmed up with running some routes. Then they put him onto the field, finally gets a target, and he's just not concentrated. He's not fully warmed up. He's not ready. He's not loose and ready to go. So that results in some of those concentration drops, in my opinion. So how do you solve that? Well, I think that you make him a focal point in the offense. You game plan with Jaylen Hyatt as one of your main players and main targets in the passing game, and you give him some targets early and often to get him going, because I think that's the key there for Jaylen Hyatt is getting him worked in early so that way throughout the game he could pick apart the defenses, set up those big deep shots later on. Right now, it seems like the Giants are kind of almost using Jaylen Hyatt as a decoy, a field stretcher. He goes out there, runs on a straight line, and kind of pulls a safety back, hopefully opening something up underneath. Or maybe once or twice a game, they'll take those deep shots to him that they dial up for him specifically. They're really using him as a pure deep threat only, and I think that's really limiting a player who has a special skill set. And I do think that going into next season, it's time to expand that skill set and ask him to do a little bit more than just run on those straight lines and run on those deep crossers. Have him run a slant route, for God's sake. It's the easiest route to run in football. You can run it efficiently. All it takes is a quarterback with good timing to get the ball on target to the receiver. And with the 4.3 speed, if he catches a slant route in stride, there's a chance he OBJs that thing and takes it to the house. So I think there are different ways that the Giants can get Jaylen Hyatt involved. Is he the most expansive route runner? Does he have a sharp route running ability and an expansive tree? No, maybe not, but there are things that he does well, and there are ways that you could scheme together opportunities to get the ball in his hands in space. And if the Giants did that more often, I think we would have seen a much better rookie season from Jaylen Hyatt rather than just using him as a pure deep threat and decoy. Again, The things that he does with his speed, the things he does going vertical, amazing, open things up for the offense. But if you're just limiting him to those 2 to 3 plays where he goes deep, you're not really maximizing his skill set. So going into next season, Jaylen Hyatt, there's a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of factors working against him, though, as I mentioned. He's not fully involved in the game plan, causes him to run cold. And really, the Giants just forget about him sometimes, I think, and they don't even put him on the field. They don't know what that's all about. But going into next season, if he improves on his concentration, improves his hands a little bit, and hopefully expands his route tree to run a more complete tree from all 3 levels of the field, then I think you're talking about Jaylen Hyatt developing into a pretty special player for the New York Giants. He definitely has that potential just because of the traits that he has that are so rare and so few and far between in this NFL. Not many players possess that kind of speed. Mixed with that 6'1" height, like Jaylen Hyatt's no short guy. Like, he's got height, he's got size. He's a really well-built wide receiver with a lot of speed. So I just think it's about honing his craft, sharpening some of those skills that maybe he's a little dull on, and then you're going to see him develop into something really talented and really special. And I do trust in Brian Daboll to come up with ways to get him the football next season. Again, it's a lost year. The Giants are playing with a third-string backup rookie quarterback. They've got a terrible offensive line in front of him. It's really tough for this offense to be game planning properly and getting the ball in the hands of their playmakers. But going into next season, hopefully they fix the offensive line a little bit. Hopefully the quarterback is a more stable position for them, and then they can work on getting the ball into the hands of those playmakers like Jaylen Hyatt, hopefully at all 3 levels of the field. But that kind of segues into the next player that we want to talk about, Alex, and that's Wan'Dale Robinson. And, you ask me, how do they get him more involved? He kind of comes and goes from the offense as well. He kind of disappears as well. For me, the number one thing that Wan'Dale Robinson needs to work on is expanding that route tree, becoming a complete receiver, and working at all 3 levels. I don't think he's had a single deep target this season other than that one flea flicker. They don't even ask him to run deep routes for the most part. Wan'Dale Robinson does everything in that 0 to 10 yard range. A lot of whip routes, a lot of slant routes, a lot of drag routes, and he's great on all those things. Screens as well. He does all those things really well. Once you get the ball in his hands, he becomes a dangerous player. But right now, it seems like they're limiting Wan'Dale Robinson to just being this gadget player. Now, I do understand that he's very short, very stocky. He's like 5'7", 5'8". It's tough to hit guys like that downfield. We saw that. There was a throw in the first half against the Packers where he was pretty wide open on the left sideline, but Tommy DeVito puts that ball in a position where most 6'1" wide receivers make that catch routinely, but a 5'8" receiver for like Wan'Dale Robinson, it's out of arm's length for him. It's out of reach. So there are some challenges to getting Wan'Dale Robinson fully involved in the game plan because of his size and his height, but it does need to become a higher priority for them because he is a special player. He does have great ball skills. He goes up there, makes contested catches, and he is a very crispy route runner that you want to get the ball in his hands in space and watch him work. But there are challenges to getting a player like that who's pretty short open downfield and hitting him on the money. It's difficult to hit a smaller target like that, and I think that does hold Wan'Dale Robinson back in many ways. But going into next season, I think that's where Wan'Dale needs to improve. Just become more of a complete playmaker, not making all of your plays in the 0 to 10 yard range. It's great to make those plays and you can make a living down there, but hopefully expanding that route tree to make some of those plays downfield. That's when Wan'Dale Robinson's going to become a really dangerous player for the New York Giants. But I love what he's flashed this season. When he's been healthy and he's been on the field, he's shown some tremendous ability for the New York Giants. Staying healthy is also probably somewhere else that he can improve. He's been banged up a lot in his NFL career. But going forward, again, next season, I think we're going to see a lot more Wan'Dale Robinson as he continues to develop his route running and his ability to play at all 3 levels. And then I think he's going to be a pretty special player. But Alex, how are you feeling about Wan'Dale Robinson? And I want to get your take on him being more of a deep playmaker because right now he's not one. He doesn't get any targets really downfield. Why do you think that is? What's limiting him? Do you think his height comes into play like I mentioned? And how do they really get him more involved in that portion of the field going forward?
Well, in terms of the deep game, I think that, it kind of boils back down to the offensive line, lack of time for letting these routes develop. But he's had some really nice deep outs that I've seen in the last couple of weeks. He's had a couple of just really phenomenal games. Wan'Dale Robinson, my friends, is going to be, when we have a functioning passing game, a high-octane slot receiver. This player that we've seen in small doses really is just scratching the surface on his potential. And keep in mind, this is his first year back from an ACL tear. He just bounced back from an ACL tear and is completely tearing apart defenses when they do focus on him. He creates separation. His yards after the catch is solid. And, man, the guy takes hit after hit after hit. He is one tough dude. I mean, I've seen him take, and I know you guys have too, those shots over the middle. They walk him into no man's land, and it's freaking awful to watch, to be honest with you. The Giants are like the most annoying team because Wan'Dale Robinson, their only like actual like productive receiver right now because they can't throw the ball more than 20 yards downfield most of the time, is just walking into no man's land. He's walking into positions where he's getting absolutely demolished because those safeties, those defensive backs, those linebackers, they're biting down on the line of scrimmage. And he's a big, short yardage guy. They're waiting for him to get that football so they can pop him. And, that's going to keep happening until the Giants finally have a passing game that, instills some fear in opposing defenses and they can expand the field. But Wan'Dale is a really good player. 55 targets, 1 drop this year. Obviously that 1 drop came against New England. Only had 26 yards that game, but the last couple of weeks he's had a couple of good games. 7 targets, that's 6 receptions against Green Bay for 79 yards. He's had a couple of, really, really standout performances, I would say. But I think this guy could be a 50-plus yard receiver every week. In fact, I would love, and Anthony, I think you could probably agree with me here, the Giants should go watch the Detroit Lions, and copy and paste with how they use Amon-Ra St. Brown and use Wan'Dale Robinson exactly the same way. They push Amon-Ra St. Brown downfield. They get him open. They use his abilities really, really well. He's a security blanket. He's a deep threat. He's a medium, intermediate throwing threat. He operates in all levels. They need to do that with Wandel. I'm not saying he's as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown because obviously he's one of the best in the game right now, but I love the way that the Lions utilize his qualities, and it expands the football field. It gives them more opportunities to get the ball to guys like Josh Reynolds. The running game is established with Jordan Montgomery and obviously Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, they have such a good thing going. And then you have Sam Laporta, who, really great pass-catching tight end. I'd love if they tried to do something similar with Daniel Bellinger. I don't think Daniel Bellinger's as good as a passing tight end, obviously. But I think as a basis, I think that Bellinger should be more involved in the passing game because we've seen what he did last year, and he's just been totally ignored in that regard. There's things that the Giants' offense does that I do not agree with. A lot of things, in fact. I think most would agree. But I'd love to see them carbon copy the playbook for Amon-Ra St. Brown and utilize Wan'Dale in a similar way. He would be such an impact player for us. We wouldn't see games where he only has like 20 yards. He needs to be having like 40, 50 plus yards a game every single week. That's how good he is. And you can't just toss him into the freaking fire where he's going to be taking these hits over the middle. You have to push him downfield, have to open up the opposing defenses, and use your anticipatory throws. He gets open on those breaks, timing routes. Wan'Dale needs more timing routes, in my opinion. Get the ball where he can get it. He's really, really solid hands. And ultimately, there's a small window for him because he's not a big guy. So, you're not going to be able to throw it up there. And that kind of suggests another reason why you don't really take 50-50 shots to him downfield because he's not going to win those battles. He's not big enough for those battles. But if you can throw anticipatory timing routed throws, when he gets into space, that ball's right where it needs to be when he turns around, he's going to make those throws. He's going to make those catches, guys. And his ability after the catch is one of the best on the team. You know what I mean? We don't lean on players enough that are that good. We don't lean on Wan'Dale enough. And it's really a product of poor offensive line play, poor scheming at times, and opposing defenses knowing he's our only weapon on offense because we can't wait for Jaylen Hyatt to get downfield. We can't wait for Slayton to get downfield. So, that's kind of where the offensive line bolstering it in the offseason comes into play. Throw some money at a proven commodity, somebody who has experience in the NFL, somebody who's played a lot of years in this league, can come in and help this line gel, can help Evan Neal get better, can help John Michael Schmitz take a step forward, can help bring some camaraderie and leadership to a unit that desperately needs someone to step up in that role. I think that's kind of my perspective. Go out and get some. I know people will be like, but Nate Solder sucked. The theory, the concept behind Nate Solder was good. To go out and get a good offensive tackle that was going to lock down left tackle for all. You can't use one example as the end all be all of everything in sports. Yes, Nate Solder sucked. But left tackle is also the most important position on the offensive line. It's not surprising he went from playing for Tom Brady to stinking with the Giants. You know what I mean? Tom Brady gets the most out of guys. Tom Brady knows how to operate within a structure like that and bring the most out of players. I think Nate Solder also, he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life for what it's worth, and I hope everything's going on really well with him. So I think he was also being really tortured by the mental aspect of all of it. I think he was driving from New York to Boston like every other day to see his son. Like, imagine the mental toll that has on you. So if you're going to use Nate Solder as an example, I really think that's not fair. I think that, you throw some money in the offensive line, reinforce it with some good stuff, and you can really start to exercise some of these talents that we have down the field and obviously open up the route tree for Wan'Dale Robinson, who should be operating at the very least in the short to intermediate ranges every single week. 40 yards at least every single week. I think that's how good he is.
I agree with you. I think that Wan'Dale Robinson's a really good player. One thing that I'll say, though, about Daniel Bellinger, it's really tough to get him involved in the passing game right now because they need him to stay in and block. You know, you're talking about how bad the Giants' offensive line is. Daniel Bellinger would be getting more targets for sure if he wasn't blocking nearly every single play. When you've got Tyree Phillips protecting that right tackle spot, I mean, you're talking about instant pass rush pressure almost every single play. And listen, I don't think Tyree Phillips is that bad of a player, but to be fair, the Giants wanted him to be maybe their starting swing tackle at some point, never their starting right tackle. So with Evan Neal out of the lineup, Tyree Phillips starting, it's really Tyree Phillips and Daniel Bellinger playing right tackle. They've got two players playing one position essentially because they can't rely on one player to get the job done. So that's been really limiting Daniel Bellinger, and that's also been that's in an effort to help get the ball in the hands of some of these playmakers, but even still, this Giants offensive line, it really is the bane of the offense's existence. It does ruin just about everything we want to see from this offense, and when you're looking at some of these playmakers, some of these receivers, there are plays where they are wide open, they're getting schemed together, but the offensive line isn't affording the quarterback enough time to get the ball in the hands of those playmakers. So really, the number one key to getting Jaylen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson more involved next season, the key to them having those breakout campaigns, it's about fixing the offensive line. That's really what it is. It's about creating a stable environment where this offense can thrive and can move the ball and sustain drives, sustain plays to get the ball in the hands of those playmakers. But right now, with how bad this offensive line is, you got to get cute. You got to get creative to get the ball out of the hands of your quarterbacks. And so it's just been tough for the Giants this season to get the ball into the hands of those playmakers and really get Wan'Dale and Jaylen Hyatt involved. But going forward into next season, they add a couple pieces on that offensive line, like you mentioned, Alex, invest in free agency. I think that's going to go a long way towards getting more plays and more opportunities available to guys like Jaylen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson, who, like we've mentioned, I think are very talented players with very high ceilings. One of them, just a killer, a merchant underneath. Another one, a deep threat, just beast going downfield. So you got a little bit of fire and ice in that regard with Jaylen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson. And now I really think the key here is finding that X receiver, that every down, all three level possession wide receiver, whether you're talking about going into free agency or making a trade for a guy like a T. Higgins, that can be your X receiver, or if you're talking about spending a pick early in the 2024 NFL draft on a Keon Coleman or a Malik Neighbors, someone like that, very high in this draft. The Giants need that X. Right now they have that Z in Jaylen Hyatt, in my opinion. He's a guy who can play off the line of scrimmage and be your vertical threat. That's what you like from your Z. And then you have that slot receiver like Wan'Dale, who just operates underneath and is a complete route runner and, run after the catch kind of guy. But the Giants need that X receiver, that every down possession separator who gets open, catches the ball, picks up first downs, and moves the chains. Once they get that X receiver, you're going to see the breakout of Z and slot alongside that X. It's going to become really, really nice on that Giants offense. But again, only if they fix that offensive line. So it'll be interesting to see what the New York Giants do in the offseason. There's a lot of wide receivers for them to target. We're going to be talking about a lot of those guys on this channel, different draft picks, different free agent options, and really, of course, the offensive line, because without that offensive line, you're going to struggle to get the ball into the hands of those playmakers, as we mentioned. But it's going to be a lot of fun breaking down all the different moves that the New York Giants can and will make right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts on the topics down in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. And have yourself a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody out there. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to Fireside Giants all year long. And we really hope that you have a lot of good time with your family and friends. And just happy holidays to everybody listening. So we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.